Looks like we are live. We are 2 seconds early and a Truth Proof Interactive Extra.
It certainly is. And sorry, guys, for no shorts last couple of, well, how long, lads? Just 2 or 3, is it, that we've missed?
Yeah, 2 we've had to dip out on because of time constraints.
Just commitments. But, we will be back on it. Probably have one for you guys Saturday. It's me. I'm holding my hands up. It's me that's not got round to getting them into a shape to send to Les for him to knock them into a shape to send to you guys. So that's basically where we've been with it. But so we thought we'd have half an hour with you guys. So we'd appreciate some questions if there's out that you want to talk about, out that you're interested in. And what's on your mind, Les?
Yeah, just stick them in caps. And unfortunately, because this was a quick fire stream, Alison's not moderating tonight, but we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And if you've got any questions, as Paul says, please put them in caps for me to just so I can highlight them and then get them read out. Yeah. There's a few people in, Paul. I don't know if you can see any names on there.
Looking, we've got Mike, the Welshman in, Stan Smith, Dave Barker. Good to see you, Dave. John Doe. We've got AJP Outdoors. I've not seen you before, mate. If we have, sorry, we've missed you. Adam Sander, O'Connell, Ann Cass. Is it Crass? Barbara Davis. Let's have a look. I'm only seeing a limited number. Oh, Gareth Hawkins. Hi, Gareth. We need to have a catch up, and let's have a look. Rod, Ogley, Steph, Sober Carper, Gareth Hawkins. Now, there's a guy who's had a strange experience at Bempton and just came on his holiday. If you want, Gareth, I mean, you can come on one Sunday and tell us about that. You might not want to, but if you do want to, put your hand up and we'll do that. You only spend 10 minutes on it. AMG, Stargazer, Lee's in, Rivington Pike, and Sober Carper, Rod. I think I've said Rod. So, yeah, and there's bound to be more. Well, there's 73 people, and we've just literally said it on Ricky C, Jan and Andrew. So we're not going to do a bingo calling of names, people. So just kick it off with a question for us, or out you want, and what's on your mind, Les?
Yeah, anything, what's on your mind? And I'd just like to add at the top of the show, and I think we'd put it in the community messages as well on YouTube. If anybody's read Louis Elizondo's new book, just give us your comments on that, because, the more varied comments or your aspects of how you view what is written or the information is that is imparted in there, it's always interesting.
I've not read it. I think everybody knows my limited time or interest to read books, if I'm being truthful. I haven't even read my own since I wrote them, and I really haven't. But Big Bird, let's have a look. Nickname, Mally. Good to see you, Mally. Jojo, I said Zeno. So, yeah, we'll have to Fire Spirit. As fast as I say it, another name comes up. So, go on.
Yeah. Well, I'll just kick off by saying, Paul, over the last couple of Sunday live streams, we've talked about strange sounds and the strange sounds that you heard at Bempton. And then you've had other reports of people giving you locations of strange sounds. Yeah. And recently, you've just told me a correspondence you got from Chris Meek, who we've had on the show, by the way.
Yeah.
Who was a researcher in Scotland. Who's been Ben Macdui, and he's got something to tell you.
He has, and he sent me about 3 bits of film, which in next few days, guys, this might be for Saturday. I hope there's enough, and I'll fire this over to Les, and we'll have a go at it tomorrow. He sent me about 3 clips of film, and Chris will jump back in a minute to Bempton because it'll tie in. Chris went to Ben Macdui with a friend. They were going to go alone, just him and his dog. I think it looks like a Malamute or something like that. It's a husky type dog. And it's a 4.5-hour trek, and he lives in Scotland anyway, so he's not that far away. But on foot, it's a 4.5-hour trek. So we'll jump to Chris in a moment, who I believe is probably the best researcher of the unexplained in Scotland, without a doubt. And that's no slant on anybody else. It's just that Chris has got a young family, he works hard for a living, and he's still articulate and good at what he does. So, but first of all, a few weeks ago, you've heard me talk about it. Martin Abbas was with us, or Martin, who was with us on Sunday night. We were up at Bempton, me, Martin, Linny, Pete, Mick Sigson, Why Sig's surname, I don't know, mate, but there you go. And Jeremy, and everybody heard us on about it Sunday night. Martin said, listen to this sound, and suddenly it's hundreds feet, then it's the other side at stand, and then it's down the cliffs, then it's up on the fields, and I've kicked it about what it could have been. This was a evening sighting, not darkness. And Ian come up with idea. Has anybody the sport? Is it a sport even? Curling, where them granite blocks that they push on ice, and when they hit each other, they make that popping sound where they've got this real hard material hitting. And he said it sounded a bit like that. Jeremy said he thought it sounded like a frog, but a really it must have been a really big, boisterous frog. And so we were debating because so where are we going with this? We've talked about the strange sound, and then Chris Meek goes up onto Ben Macdui. The mist folds in. 5 a.m. in the morning, he gets up and has a look around because his dog's kind of focused on something, but he's looking into the mist. Says, I can only see about 5 yards in front of me. He says, and suddenly I can hear a sound very close, 3 to 5 yards in front of me. And I'm not going to make sound, but he said it almost sounded like a huge frog or a toad. We're up on a mountain and it's just about freezing up there because we're planning to go up. Hopefully this year we've got to go before October and spend some time up there because I'm interested in the big grey man. That's the reason. Anybody's ever heard the story of the big grey man of Ben Macdui? And is it a broken spectre? Is there something there that's paranormal? I don't know, but I want to go up and have a little taste of this location. But he says, I'm just looking. He says, my dog's fixed. He's even took photographs and done little bits of film for us. Not got the sound. Very windy. He says, and this sound, it sounds like a frog or a toad, but it just extends. It's just giving it that noise. He says, I'm looking, I'm thinking, it's only just in front of me. He says, and then mist starts to clear. And he'd got his FLIR thermal camera. They don't work great in mist and can't see nothing. He said, and then suddenly it's behind me. Same sound. So I thought, what a coincidence that it had been likened. If you heard Martin on Sunday, he says, shall we talk about the were-frog? Tongue-in-cheek, a bit of fun, really, because he was with us when that sound came on the cliffs. And Jeremy says, I think it sounded a bit like a huge frog or something. And I said, it's the were-frog. I says, we've created a new cryptid. Jokingly, people, obviously. I'm not going to try and add that up onto cliff tops. But I thought, how ironic that Chris is up there a few weeks later and he hears a sound and he's likening it to something similar. So just a fascinating one.
Yeah. So in your research of Ben Macdui, as the mist and the fog, obviously, you're going to get a lot of it up there.
Yeah,
on the mountain. But as it predominantly been where it's been foggy and misty, where the strange phenomena.
Good point. And I think like you've just said, predominantly there's a lot of mist up there, a lot of adverse weather conditions, and people have been up there. But what I find fascinating is because they talk about it, and I've just seen Al Durham in. Good to see you, Al. Mark Anderson, Big Bird, and Mr. G. Steve Tees. What I find fascinating is that the people have said it's a broken spectre, and it's this sort of weather phenomenon that people are seeing, and almost an apparition of them, not an apparition, but the shape of themselves, and in the shadow. But the footsteps have been heard whilst inside tents. Yeah, because people have said, "I'm walking down mountain," and you're walking down this. It's not when people talk about this mountain. I don't think it's any steeper than that ravine, although it goes up thousands and thousands of feet that we came out of up in Forests of North Yorkshire. Do you know what I mean? But so you're walking. When you're walking, apparently they're assuming that there might be some reverberation, some kind of effect, some kind of natural phenomena that's creating the echo of your footsteps. And when you stop, they stop, and when you start again, they start again. So these aren't skeptical people coming up with these ideas. It's fairly rational. It could be, but I find it fascinating that people have actually heard the footsteps whilst being inside their tents. People have heard the footsteps or perceived this being whilst stationary. So I find the legend, the stories, if that's all they are legends and that have grown out of all proportion, are incredible. But I find that they've stayed the course of time for so long. You know, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that this mountain is mostly all shale, isn't it, Paul? There's no soft ground to speak
It's
of.
not shale so much, but yeah, there's no trees. It's barren. There's nothing up there,
Yeah.
Les. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But,
so it must be pretty stark up there when it's snowing, and you've
well,
got a couple of feet of snow, a couple of foot of snow under your feet.
well, that's what Chris said. He said if we're going to do it, we've got to go before October. He's willing to go, and I want to go. So yeah, why not? I'm game for that one. Might not be able to walk next year. Just take it while you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating, and I just think that it's probably one of the most fascinating stories to come out of Scotland. Really, the big grey man.
Okay. We'll start off with a question. Dave Barker, have you ever seen anything on overcast nights on the cliffs?
We have, Dave. Yeah, we have, and I'd put it to you, but I know you can't answer us. I could chuck you a link. You can tell us about them lights if you want, but I'd put it to you that from your vantage point, because you can just about see as much as we can. Have you seen anything on overcast nights? Have you? Because you've seen some things that are, I won't say up close and personal, but quite close. And for what we're talking about here is a man that lives quite close to Speeton.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say, Dave? Put it up in chat. Probably from the cliffs, a mile and a half, with an unobstructed view. And Dave's seen these strange lights, but not over the sea, inland from the cliffs. In early hours at morning, I had some absolutely brilliant report too of Dave. So yeah, we have seen things on overcast nights, and we've seen things what I would call up close and personal as well, Dave. And I always cite the Lee Hayward sighting because I've never seen anything like it. It were in field with us. I sound like a broken record, guys, but that's how much it were kind of special. And was it because Lee were there? Who can say?
Fire Spirit is asking, did you get up on the cliffs in the storm the other night?
No, I didn't know. I heard the storm, and we have been up there in storms and all sorts of weathers. We were up there, I think it was early this year. Carl Dan were with us and his wife and Linny, and I've never, ever been in wind as strong in my life. If you look at the shorts on YouTube that we've put on, you'll see one. It might just be it might be called weather phenomena or something like that. It weren't unexplained phenomena, but where it come from, that storm, I do not know. But I missed that one.
Okay, and I've got a question from John.
There's a good one there from 40 and 23. Don't forget that.
I'm coming up to all them, Paul. Yeah. John Alexander, have you ever seen any strange tracks on the beach, prints or drag marks that don't fit with the usual?
David Hind and David now lives in Driffield, and he featured in Bringing Down the Light, and he's put us a few reports, well, 2 reports, and he used to live in Bempton. Anybody wants to Google David, he went in Guinness Book of Records for having the loudest voice in the world. He was Bridlington town crier. Great guy, David. Great booming voice on him. But what have I got to say? David sent me some pictures of some unusual prints, like a dog pad, but with great big long claws on the beach. And what I found interesting, I don't think they could have been faked, because there were no other prints around them, and they're just off down beach by themselves. What I don't know. My only reservation was I couldn't compare them with anything. So in theory, you could have put a matchbox outside of them. So it could have been a badger with overgrown claws. You couldn't tell. They did look interesting, but I had nothing to compare them with. But other than that, not on beach, no. Have you, John?
Yeah. Right then, Al Durham. The Whitechapel murders of 1888 made Jack the Ripper the world's most famous killer. But have you ever considered it could have been a dogman or a cryptid?
I hadn't until you've just put that in, Al. And
interesting.
Do you know, nobody ever obviously we named this Jack the Ripper, but nobody ever actually could get a firm grip on who this was. And we are stepping on anything too sensitive. There's been suggestion of dogman or cryptid type interaction with some fatalities in recent years, aren't they? I'm always careful not to jump down that or open that door, because what we're talking about, Al, as you know, is absolutely ridiculous. It's off the scale of anything normal. So I think we're taking it up to another level if we started trying to tie it in with things like that. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I think it's hard enough for Joe Public to get their head around what we talked about in Wolflands, what some of these witnesses here have seen and experienced. But that does not mean for one moment that you've not seen and experienced it. Just because some people can't get their heads around things that are happening does not mean they're not happening. Just because scientific community thinks, well, what this man's describing, what this woman's describing, seeing and experiencing just isn't possible. It clearly is possible, because that's what they're telling you they've experienced. And if it were just standalone, and I ain't got one example, but if that were just a standalone experience, you'd think, yeah, they're a bit deluded, these people, just having some psychotic episode. However, hundreds and hundreds of people are all having the same episodes then, aren't they? Because as fast as you want to disprove one, there's another one lined up ready to go.
Yeah, I've just been.
I know we jumped about there, Al, but
I've just been thinking about this question. Now, Jack the Ripper, 1888. Now, I don't know of all the cases or where all these women were found, but were any actually found indoors, Al? Because if they were found indoors, I would have thought it'd be less likely that it's some kind of creature. Just my thoughts on that.
And I don't know either, but you can bet your bottom dollar Al will, and I don't know that. But having said that, we've taken cryptid reports where these things have appeared in people's homes. I mean, you not so much a cryptid report. There's an apparition of some kind of wolf type animal and we've filmed the guy already. And so
that'll be unveiled in Wolflands 2 working title. So
2030.
2030, yeah. Okay, we'll move on then. Zeno is asking, Paul, any chance you could take an MFI reading when you next go up there? Would be interesting to give a baseline on existing magnetic field strength.
Could do. I mean, yeah, why not? Why not? It'd be interesting to do. I need somebody, Zeno, I've no qualms in saying this, who'll do all the technical side of it. I mean, half at time I'm stood there with cameras and I'm all over the place. I mean, at the moment, sounds like an excuse, but we're getting up there and sometimes there's 10 people up there. And so a lot of them we don't know that are coming up because they're interested in phenomena. And in some instances, you're losing essence of why you're there. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be coming. People are enthusiastic and enjoying it. But you detracted from why you're there sometimes, I see Martin's in, is he? Yeah, good to see you, Martin. And Gillian Stapleton, Fort Mine.
Mike, the disabled Welshman, as far as I know, Mary Kelly was the only Jack the Ripper victim who was killed indoors. Well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it doesn't prove anything in my mind, obviously, but I'm just putting it in there as the different locations.
I can see where Al's coming from, but I just think it's a giant leap to try and tie those things, the phenomena of the dogman stroke werewolf phenomena. And let's just get it right. When people say werewolf, we're not talking about transformation. We're not talking about silver bullets. That's for movies. We're talking about something bipedal in the shape of a man, but for all intents and purposes, more like a dog or a hound.
Well, I've got a question that might just take us somewhere else, Paul, and this is from 1423. Have you ever observed any Tic-Tac type lights off the coast of Bempton or Flamborough?
Well, yeah, definitely. I got a bit of film. I can't remember year. Someone tells me it was 2018 with a former police officer, Dave Barnes, and that Dave saw it come out of Filey Bay, this sphere.
Right. Yeah.
We can't say it was tic-tac shaped, can we? Because it looked like a sphere of light, but it came up. I got it when it was level with Filey Brig, and it came all the way across, and then stopped when it was level with us. And I don't think it was because of us. I just think that's just how it happened. Slowly went down and went into the sea. Great bit of footage, that one, Les. Can you remember it?
Yeah,
we haven't got it.
Yeah,
we haven't got it to hand now. I don't think we can got it to hand to show you guys because I didn't know that were coming up. But something shaped like the Tic-Tac. When me and Chris Turner did Bringing Down the Light, I lined up a guy who lived at Burton Fleming, a former South African military man. I'm trying to think of his name, but basically, he spent the day at the RSPB reserve at Bempton, looking at the seabirds, him and his wife. And you've got the old RAF base. As you're going down, you have the old RAF base to the left. And a lot of people, if you've seen it or seen pictures, you'll know what I'm talking about. They're walking along. It's a brilliant sunny day. So here's one also for people that said, you only see these things at night. So he's walking along. He says, lots of people about. He says, and myself and my wife, we look up to the base and you can only see one big concrete structure left. Rest of them, there's plinths for Type 80 radar and things. He says, and there's a huge lozenge-shaped object that was big, say, as a minibus or a big van over the top of this concrete structure.
Yeah,
and it's not very high up. He says, and I'm looking at it, and there's a lot of people about. We're trying to show people, and they're not looking at us; they're ignoring us, which is odd. It's almost like they're not there. He says, and we're pointing to it and nobody's watching us. Nobody's taking any notice. He says, so from there, we walk up the side of the field. They don't go onto the property. They don't go onto the land that the farmer owns. They walked up the side of the field and they're still looking at this and still trying to point this to people. It's a dark grey in colour. So at one point, they both must have looked away because when they look again, it's white. It's brilliant white, shaped like a lozenge, is how he said, like, you know, like a bullet at both ends, should we say, Tic-Tac. Says, and it's brilliant white, he said, and we're staring at this thing. It's not very high up, and we're thinking it's got to be tethered. It's got to be a barrage balloon or something. It's got to be tethered, but we can't see nothing, and we're pretty close to it, and it's not high. And we're sort of still trying to bring it to people's attention. Next time they look, it's gone. It's vanished. So Tic-Tac type lights or objects. This was more than a light, 40, and so a great sighting. As I say, if anybody who's got Bringing Down the Light, the DVD, or looked at the film, you'll hear this guy describe it. So Robert, I can't think of his surname, but there you go.
So we've got a Tic-Tac reports. Did you get a reporting of a Tic-Tac from America? Was it Niagara Falls or something, or what?
But it's not a report as such. I think it was Terry Brown, who's been on one Sunday and talking about what he's interested in and what have you. And he'd put a report up of a Tic-Tac type object. See, I think it must have been Niagara Falls. Only tonight, just comes up at about. It comes up from, let's just say, from 10 o'clock up towards the 10 o'clock position, just shooting off. And there's a few different screen grabs of it and different speed and motion. It does look interesting. It don't look like an insect to me. It's fascinating, but I always worry because there's people far more clued up than I am. Whether we're always going to ask the question now: is it genuine? Is it real? You know, or is it some kind of CGI? Yeah,
I mean, am I right into thinking that you think these Tic-Tacs are not just a new phenomena? They're you know, since the year dot.
Well, I don't think it's new, not at all. And let's not forget, we haven't a clue what shape these spheres of light are in the night. I'm not saying the Tic-Tac shape, by the way. But if we can use the Bempton sighting, mind you, having said that, the Bempton sighting were early 2000s, and I think we're talking 2002, the Tic-Tac. I'm not certain, but I don't think it's. Well, no, let's jump to another one. Let's go to 1967, and I mean that when we talk about UFO sightings, this must rank as one of the all-time best UFO sightings. And where did it come from? Flamborough Head. It was a 5.5 hour sighting. 5.5 hours. And not just observed by some bloke stood in a field and relaying a story like I'm doing tonight. It was observed by the Coast Guard from the Flamborough Coast Guard station. The Bridlington Free Press newspaper reporter came and observed it with binoculars. The military were informed, and I was kind of on the spot here, people, but I think it was seen, let's just say 6:30 in the morning, and it was still there at 12:30. We're just whatever. It was a 5.5 hour sighting, and we know maths aren't right for that, but it was a 5.5 hour sighting. I wrote about it in the first book, and got all the information, and they're observing this, and they thought it were tethered. They couldn't understand it. The Coast Guard are looking at this object and describing it as looking, and we'll get to Tic-Tac in a moment, as like a huge triangle that's dark with a white line down its side that then kept changing into the shape of a bullet, rounded at both ends, essentially a Tic-Tac shape. The Free Press, when, as the day started to come alive, the Bridlington Free Press newspaper reporter was contacted. He arrived with binoculars and he observed it and he described it. 5.5 hour sighting. It was also seen over Filey, looking towards Flamborough Head. That were reported in Scarborough Evening News. That's 1967. So, these unusuals have still been seen. It was a high altitude, but it must have been huge as they're looking at it. And they said there were aircraft circling underneath it. Yeah. They contacted, I can't remember RAF base that they contacted, but they contacted the RAF, who said they'd got a military exercise going on that morning, but this was not part of it. And obviously it was well above it. So I found that one fascinating. And what's equally fascinating, 5 days before, and I think I'm right with this, 5 days before this sighting, this 5.5 hour sighting, the craters appeared. Craters on Flamborough Head, Dufton Fell, Lanarkshire, all over the UK. These hollowed out craters that just appeared overnight that nobody could kind of put a finger on and say why they'd appeared. And for most of the craters, they brought in the famous astronomer, as I've said before, Patrick Moore. And he was brought in for one reason, to dispel the myth of little green men. Why? If you've got nothing to worry about, why? It's just nuts. And the Flamborough crater, just before you go on to your question, Les, the military came with Geiger counters, bomb disposal, because this thing had appeared as the farmer had gone to cut hay one morning. When he came back, it was there. And the military said that lightning had hit a gas pocket on the cliff tops. No rain, no lightning.
Yeah. Fascinating. And you took photos of the crater.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's I think it's one of these shots, but it's definitely in one of the books, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah, myself and Mary went because after I'd written about the craters, and an old chap who lived on Queensgate in Bridlington told me that he'd read the book, he'd read book one, and he wanted to tell me that he'd found a crater back in the 1960s, like the same time period that the Hood Farm crater was found on Flamborough Head. And I went and met this guy, I went and spoke with him. We were in his 90s, and he worked for a large where they move aggregate and big wagons, quarrying and things. Yeah. His exact words were Beacon Hill at Flamborough. He says, I reduced Beacon Hill over 28 years from a huge hill to just a mound. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do it now because it's a historic kind of monument, isn't it? It's an earthwork. Yeah. But he said, but he found a crater at the back of the RAF base in the same time period that the Hood crater was found, only he never said a word. He directed me to it. I went with a big surveyor's tape. I measured it. It was 63 foot. And when I put a string line across it, and when I stood in it, it was still over 6 foot deep. I mean, and that was from 1960s till I don't know when I went and measured it. Gosh, I don't know. I'd probably 2018. And incidentally, it's now been filled in. But I got a load of photographs of it and everything. But interesting. And Chris Meek is, if you can hear that noise, that's Chris sending me more images of Ben Macdui. And I know it is, but so we'll try and get you that organised for Saturday.
Yeah, and let's have a look at this one. This is interesting. Jan and Andrew, did you know the chap from Scolby Manor near Scarborough took 2 bloodhounds to look for Jack the Ripper? No murders whilst he was there, though. Interesting.
No, I didn't, Jan. And interesting. But yeah, there's obviously my knowledge of the Jack the Ripper case is zilch. But I'm not saying it's not interesting, because obviously it's fascinated people for many, many years, as macabre as it is.
And just a little pat on the back from Al this evening. Thanks for the feedback, Paul and Les.
No, you're welcome, mate. You're welcome. It's always good to hear from you, Al. You get yourself back down to Bempton.
Question from Lee, and great supporter of the show is Lee Roscoe. Question is, Les and Paul, are you thinking of turning the Humnumby into a film?
It kind of needs doing, doesn't it? I mean, I bump into Andrew quite often, the main witness, and I also see sons very often. I mean, every few weeks, and every time I speak to them, I say, I'll have to get you down, and it's just a matter of me getting them sat down and to retell the story. I mean, I've already recorded Andrew's version and Dave's version, and a witness number 3 I haven't recorded because I weren't allowed, but I've got it. It's all in here. And Andrew's sons also saw and experienced things at Humnumby, and they were only young lads at the time, I don't think they were teenagers at the time, but they saw an experience. So they're sort of primed to be filmed as well.
I wonder
it's so big.
I wonder how many witnesses are out there that you haven't reached to yet, Paul.
There's a plumber that Steve Ashbridge, well, I actually know him, but I didn't know in 1998 that he was driving home. And I realize, people, I'm talking about locations that you're not going to know about, but it just come off what's called the Dotterel roundabout, heading towards Scarborough, and then you take a left to Humnumby. And he stopped because there were an elderly couple with a car skewed in the road. And bearing in mind, back in 1998, it wouldn't have been desolate, but there wouldn't have been tons of traffic, because it's only leads you to the village. He said, and they're looking up at a huge black triangle. He says, I stopped, I watched it. So it might or it might not be connected to that, but I can tell you that they were probably half a mile from the warehouse where they were parked, looking up at this thing. So that guy's definitely got to kind of figure in what anything that would be filmed. But he's standalone. It's too big. Somebody said to me a few weeks ago, why aren't you doing anything else with Humnumby? And I'm not going to pull my camera out and show you guys, but I'm in a way, I feel like I'm letting some people down, because I've got report after report. I mean, all these are people I've got to contact, and there's just no end to it. Seriously, and they're all people to contact, and I have contacted most of them, but the great stories, the great accounts. So if I set about Humnumby, I'm basically saying I don't think I'd be able to do what else. I see Reggie Porter's in. That's my grandson. How you doing, Reg? Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. And thanks for bringing that up, Lee. And I'd just say, from our point of view, I would love to do that whole account. And I have talked about it in the past years with Paul, but due to commitments at my end and Paul's end, we just hadn't been able to get that off the ground.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Reg. Yeah, I'm good. I haven't seen you for months, but there you go. Les has talked about it, and it's something that needs doing, because none of us, let's face it, again, any younger, and neither are these witnesses, and we kind of need to get them interviewed and get this documented, because I potentially think it's probably one of the biggest cases in UK.
Okay, thanks for the question, Lee. 1423, thanks for answering my question, Paul. I can recommend anyone who hasn't seen your older short clips of a film on your YouTube site, some great historical clips of the strange light forms that you've caught.
Yeah, thank you, 40. And you know, there's more. I have Les will know what camera it is. I had a pretty low resolution, but it was brilliant in low light. I had a VX2100 Sony camera, which I've still got. and they were on little digital cassettes. And I have got a box of digital cassettes. I don't mean full of the light form phenomena, but there's lots of phenomena on there from the wolds, from everywhere. And what do we do with that, Les? Do you, because I think it's just going to wear camera out if I start playing and winding and rewinding. And I need to get them digitized because there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and because these are tapes and you've got to play back tape in linear time, then obviously everything's got to be done in real time, mostly when you're transferring them back into another digital format from tape. So it's a time element, Paul, I think, with a lot of this.
I'll tell you what else we got as well. I can't remember year once again, but I think it was 2014. They were a low flying, I think it were a DC-9, and it was flying over Staxton and the surrounding area. It were in newspapers, local newspapers. People were asking what it was doing. Apparently it was surveying something, but it was doing it for over a week. Very, very low. And I stopped on the way from Caton one day and grabbed the Sony. And I've got it on, but I can't find it, but I've got it on one of the tapes, and I'm filming this DC-9, and an object passes it. And I saw it pass, and I remember commenting, but it's on one of them digital tapes. But there were that much happening on the wolds back in 2009 to 14 and all that. You were just crazy.
Well, I'll have to come down there and we'll have to get some equipment set up, Paul, to transfer all these. Right, I've got a question from, and thanks for the question, people, by the way, tonight, and thanks for all the support. And seeing as though it was just a one-off extra that we'd put on at the last minute, I'm surprised many people have caught the show tonight, Paul.
150 people, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'll put this one up. It's Matthew Cook. Have you heard of the hum phenomena that a load of us in Withensea have reported over the years? It's a worldwide phenomena. Human has a site to report it to.
Absolutely. We've even spoken about it, Matthew, on here. And if obviously you're in Withensea, and you'll know that you can actually be laid in bed on a night and you can't hear it. And then when you can hear it, it's so subtle, you can't unhear it. It's so frustrating. And we hear it here. And the lady over at road, Maria, when I hear this hum, you can guarantee that the next day when I come out of the house, or she'll give us a call, she said, "Did you hear it last night? It was driving me mad." And we don't hear it all the time, but we do. It'd be interesting, Matthew, if when you hear it, you get in touch and let's see whether we're hearing it in Bridlington. But do you know, I'd done quite a bit on it. It's been heard all over, hasn't it? And there's been lots of theories and suggestions, you know, dryers, grain dryers and all sorts of things. It's big kind of diesel generators. It's just so strange. And it's a frustrating, it's a proper earworm.
Is it a continuous hum people are hearing, or is it sporadic? Is
it's continuous? You actually know when it switches off, Les.
Yeah.
You just know when it's gone. But it's so subtle because you can it's literally there, but you're not aware of it. And then suddenly you think, what can I hear? And when you've heard it, you can't unhear it. It's frustrating.
Yeah, because I live next to an industrial estate, not a few hundred yards away. And then we used to have factories, obviously, what worked overnight. And one of them was a fish frying factory. And then all you heard was obviously the burners and whatever extractors going all night, and that's the hum you heard. So that was a continuous same tone hum all night through.
But what you got with that, Les, is you've got a perfectly rational explanation.
Oh yeah,
what Matthew's saying here. I mean, I don't want to make a mystery where there isn't one, but what Matthew's saying here is this has been going on for years and years and years, and lots of people have put their minds to discovering what it is. And they've not come up with
what I'm trying to say is that's the only hum I have experienced where it's been a continuous tone. So I'm just trying to equate what people are hearing out there, what I haven't heard yet. Is it the same as what I've heard here? I'm not saying theirs is a factory. I'm not saying it's this, that, and the other. Because I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's so subtle. Well, as I said, once you've heard it, you can't unhear it.
Right, I've got a question, and for the sake of dancing around YouTube.
I see Alison's in. Good to see you, Alison. Ivan Step.
for the sake of dancing around
Stan?
YouTube's policies here, I won't read some of it out. But John Paul Body, Paul, have you ever found any correlation between the animal black bleep and stone circles? I found both of the same same day, both the same day, years ago, close to each other. Stone circles.
Okay, John. So you found both on the same day. So I'm assuming that you must have been close to well, you've got to have been close to a stone circle, or are you talking about somebody that's placed a circle of stones in proximity to where one of these fatalities has occurred? I don't know. There's definite correlations to unexplained phenomena and strange happenings with burial mounds and earthworks. That it can't be denied. It's there. A lot of these things and events of strangeness are happening around earthworks. And I know you'll probably already know this, John, but you must have been near a stone circle. Are we talking about a known circle, or one that you're saying people have put stones around? I don't know.
Put up on a day type of thing, yeah.
Almost, we're probably not allowed to say it, but almost sacrificial. But I think we are allowed to say that word. It's strange. Les is dancing around words here, John, and so do I, because seriously, you two put constraints on what we can say and what we can't say.
Okay, I've got a question. Let's have a look. We'll have a look at this one. Question, Stuart Givens. Could the popping sounds on the cliffs be a directional beam from a satellite? It's a good question.
Yeah, it could be, Stuart. You know, as with anything, you know, we want to come up with I wouldn't say a logical answer, but an answer. And your suggestion's as good as any. I tell you what I thought, with the composition of the cliffs being chalk, and I thought, has there been some settlement, and are we hearing it popping and the chalk snapping? Because, you know, we heard it where Martin was, we heard it under my feet, we heard it other side, we heard it down cliffs, we heard it in field. There could be a perfectly rational explanation for it, and what you've suggested could just be that. I don't know.
Okay, and Tom Waters is not a question, but I did TP3 from cover to cover by the full.
Lucky you, Tom.
Yeah.
Did you have a whiskey and coke at side of you, or what? A nice refreshing fruit juice? But yeah, it's good, and good to see you in here, Tom, and we'll see you up on cliff tops. And for people that don't know, when we put the heat signature up, which we don't know what it was in the short, I can't even remember what I've called it, Les. But that heat signature that we put up a few months ago, where a man and his daughter went to walk and have a look at it. Jeremy went to look at it. It was Tom who went to walk and look at that heat signature, because there's lots of people said in comments, it's faked. I've somehow faked it. You were there, Tom. No, I'm not into the business of faking, and I don't care about putting my head above parapet and saying that word, because it weren't. Jeremy was stood in front of it, whatever it was, talking on his Psionics camera, saying, I don't know if Paul's still watching, but I can't see it. Where is it? And I'm saying to him on the phone, you're in front of it. So I put all that together.
And that video, for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, or anybody new to the stream, that one is called We Caught Visible Evidence on an Invisible Presence. So that's one.
Strange. A strange one. I don't know whether Tom's put out it. Yeah, it was definitely there. Yeah, too right it was.
Okay. Paul Flanagan. Hi guys, any thoughts on the 3 a.m. phenomenon, where a veil is said to be the thinnest, notably 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. I don't know whether it means a.m. or on that one.
I think it means a.m. actually, but
is maybe when people are most likely to go missing. Must be some sort of connection, according to Paul.
It could be, Paul. You know, I mean, I'm sorry for sort of spreading net and saying could be, because I'm reluctant to say, yeah, I think you're right, because I don't know. But it is fascinating that a lot of strange things seem to occur in between, let's just say 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning, the very dark hours of the morning, the deep hours. And when these things seem to occur. You're going to say something, Les? You've got an opinion on that?
No, I just think
I thought
I've got a frog in my throat.
You're not trying to make that noise, are you, on cliff tops?
I'm trying to recreate that noise. Yeah. No, I was just thinking, doesn't that period in time reflect that if when you're in bed asleep, it's when your body's at its lowest resonance as well.
Could be.
So,
you know, a lot of visitations and things seem to happen. You know, people will recall and say, "What time was it?" Say, "What, 3:30?" You know, and you know, I looked at the clock and it was 3:30 or it was 3 o'clock. So I don't know, Paul, but yeah, maybe there's a connection or some sort of connection. I think if somebody took,
yeah. Good question. Dave Barker, do you ever feel vulnerable walking in the Dyke in the pitch black?
I've got my little. Hey, look, how could I be vulnerable with this little fella? Hey, Bobster. No, I know what you're saying, Dave. To be honest, no, I don't, and I don't mind. I just get out of the car and do my thing. I've told everybody about being absolutely frightened to death a few years ago on them cliff tops with Steve Ashbridge. And I don't know where that came from, but it just descended on me. And there's a guy who comes up onto cliffs with us, Mark, and he's reluctant, but I am going to record him. I'll twist his arm to talk about the fear that descended on him. So I mean, there must be people in chat that it's not about bravery. You're just kind of comfortable in your own skin, sort of thing, and then out of nowhere, a fear from nowhere just descends on you, and you don't know where it's come from. But sorry, Dave, to ramble on there, but no, I don't really. No, I'm quite happy wandering about there, to be honest.
Okay, and going back to our mention of Lou Elizondo, nickname is asking, have you heard any the latest interviews? He talks about a small island size dark object under the sea, moving fast, not too dissimilar to what is reported off your coast, USOs. Do you think?
Well, maybe. I've not heard any of his interviews, nickname, and I don't dispute that's what he's saying. And I can't say it'd be like this. It'd be wrong to say, well, where's his proof? Because where's the proof of anything I'm saying? Or any of us, do you know what I mean? But it's interesting. I mean, there must be other people that have got some kind of proof of this. There must be some data. I don't know, some kind of radar data or something that's been plotted with a submarine, or I don't know, some seismic survey that's seen this. I don't know. Well, who's to say that he's not on the money with it? I really don't know. We've seen things under the sea, but a small island, we've not seen anything like a small island. I mean, it's hard to say how big those lights were under sea, but they must have been quite substantial. You know, we know a light will emanate and look a lot bigger than the actual core body of whatever it is that's projecting the light, but they must have been quite substantial, but not an island.
Okay, Big Shooter is asking, Les Paul, if you saw what you thought to be a UFO on the ground, would you report it to the authorities?
No, I'd probably share it with you guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you know what I mean? I'd probably share it with you guys. Do you know, years ago, the closest to what we call some kind of structured or landed UFO, there's a valley. If you come out of Sledmere, I realise a lot of people are going to have to Google these locations, but Sledmere on the East Yorkshire Wolds, come out of Sledmere and head towards Octon, and there's a big valley on the right-hand side as you're driving along. And a guy there who worked for Plaxton's coaches, the bus coaches in Scarborough, was driving along early one morning, and he claims just off the ground in the bottom of the valley was an silver egg-shaped object.
Yeah.
With little beings. I mean, he didn't report it to authorities. He told me about it. I only found out, he didn't specifically think I'm going to tell Paul about this. I got to know the guy, and he told me he'd seen this. An odd thing, jumping away from it, Shooter here, but he says, I didn't stop. He says, I can't for life of me think why I didn't stop. You've got a good vantage point as you're driving along to look. He said, but I never thought to stop. It's weird, isn't it, why we don't do these things? Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, and if you want my thoughts on that, Big Shooter, I think the authorities already know of these of these incidents and these what we see, they already know. And when we have Farlingdales, which is the biggest radar operation in the UK, looking for anything what comes, well, like I say, even under the radar, they know what's in that airspace. They know exactly. And this is why you see, in my opinion, this is why you see, you might see 1, 2, 3 lights flash by you. And Paul, how many times have you reported where you've had reports of people seeing then fighter jets or some kind of military jet?
Short time after.
They already know.
Short time after. Let's not close down without getting back to John Paul's question, but just want to go to that.
Which is that one question? Which is the question?
Hold on. Let's just
go back a bit.
Well, I'll do it.
I've got this. Is it the stone circle thing?
Yeah, but let's just stay with other bit first. Just go back a bit. Let's just go back for a minute. You were on about RF Farlingdales and people knowing, and I was given I spoke to him. First of all, I was told about this diver called Peter, who Peter Fergus. He'll not mind me saying it. He now teaches diving. That's what he does. He puts people through their and get some qualifications. But at the time, he was a deep sea diver. There weren't a lot of work, and he teamed up with a Flamborough fisherman. I've told this story before, but not many times. And they were fishing on a cobble, a little fishing boat, and they were off coast of Flamborough. Little inlets and all over, and he'd put diving gear on and he'd dive down and he'd catch lobsters, come to the surface, drop them in boat. It sounds easy, but probably not as easy as that, because they're not going to be expecting you to be on seabed that aren't the lobsters. But anyway, there'd been a very, very bad storm, and all the sea were churned up and colour of sludge, so it weren't worth diving. But the Flamborough man, with his knowledge of the sea, knew that it would have ripped up mussels, whelks and winkles from the seabed, and he also knew a little secluded cove that you can't get to unless you're in a boat to collect these. He said, so we went to this cove, he says, and we put them in fertilizer bags, and we got about 20 bags of these huge winkles, which they sold to something Pickles. It might come to me during the course of this story. It might have been Herman's Pickles in Hull. But anyway, he said we stopped and we're having a sandwich and just having a natter. And it'll all make sense in a minute from that question. He said, I'm sat on rocks. He says, it's a beautiful clear day and I can see this little cloud on its own, just doing nothing. I fix on it. He says, and the next thing, it just dropped. This thing drops. Oh, the cloud cleared and there's a silver thing like a Tic-Tac. 1972, I think this was. Yeah. He says the next thing, it drops and then just stops on just above the surface of the sea. Literally drops. And then it's off like a bullet to Filey and gone. My point is what Les has just said about Farlingdales and other military installations potentially knowing. He said within 5 to 10 minutes, he says 2 Lightning aircraft just gone roaring over the top of us in the direction of where that had gone. So, you made a good point there, Les, but because our air defence in that respect from radar stations like Farlingdales is absolutely, you won't be able to get a feather through that airspace, Paul. A feather, but not only that, I think they're doing more than that. But this is speculation on my part. I think they're doing more than just monitoring the airspace. I think they're doing a lot more monitoring on people like us. You could be right. I tell you, I've got quite a few reports from the base, and people said to me in past, "Oh, have you been told things that you can't share?" And some of them I have been told, and don't get me wrong, they're not. It's not going to change world what I've been told, but it's interesting, and it should be compromising for who told me. So there is more happening around those locations. Throw that question up then, Les. Okay, so it was the John Paul body, but that's it. Basically, we found a circle of smaller stone circles all around our tent after opening the tent in the morning. Then a short time later, discovered the other thing. Location was Dane's Dyke. Doesn't surprise me that as you know, John, from our conversation. That's interesting. Yeah, and so I take it. I wish we'd got you here to talk to you, John. I mean, if you could go off camera and come on a Sunday and share that with us if you want, and if you don't want to, that's fine. And I'll give you the call and we'll have a talk about it. But obviously, I'm wanting to ask, and I suppose everybody in chat wants to ask, did you hear anything at night? You've got a circle of stones around your tent that weren't there before, and then you've got a deceased animal within the circle, or within the circle, or close to the circle. What does that mean? Where were you in Dyke? I have a feeling that you'd have gone to the bottom. I could be very wrong here. Wet beaches, and then you'd have gone up them steps to your left, and you'd have been on that top bit. But you tell me if I'm wrong. But that's where I think you might have been. It's fascinating, and thank you. And once again, Dyke. I love it when people come out with these locations. I've only spoke to this man once. And, you know, we sort of danced around a few emails and messages for quite a while, and then we finally spoke. And I want to speak some more.
Lee Roscoe says, hope you've all enjoyed True Proof Extra tonight. Yep. Yeah. I hope so as well.
Well, basically, as me and Les spoke about earlier, Les has been busy, I've been busy, and we like to put the shorts out Tuesdays and was it Saturdays, isn't it? And I've just not had
Tuesdays
time.
and Saturdays, yeah.
So we both kind of come up with an idea. Let's just get on here for a Scottish Paranormal podcast. Pleased to meet you. And I think we know who that is. It's Chris.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris Meek. So Ben Macdui guy, we want you on to talk about the sound.
Yeah, and I'll just put that one up now while you've mentioned his name. Had the 3 a.m. Last night, then let the dog out, notice the neighbour also getting up at the same time. So
fascinating, Chris.
3 a.m. business. Yeah.
And maybe not, Chris, but do you think there's any relationship to what you heard on Ben Macdui on Friday night / Saturday morning?
Yeah,
and I think you said that was 5 a.m., didn't you? And if you weren't on earlier, mate, I've already told them what you heard, and hopefully there's nothing better than getting it from horse's mouth. So if Chris wants to come on, say Sunday, or get you on for a Thursday, and we'll cover a load of other things, because Chris has been on 3 times, Les, hasn't he? Or twice.
2 or 3
and he's
times,
always
yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
and brilliant. Yeah. Let's have a look then, Lee. Question: what do you both think of the military getting to an encounter site before anybody else, and they get there 9 times out of 10 before anybody else, according to Lee?
It's probably like what Les has said, and what a lot of other people think, Lee, that in some instances they're aware when these things are maybe infiltrating our airspace. To say that these things are of no defense significance, they're obviously of some significance, otherwise they wouldn't want to get to them. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because there's loads and loads of other types of sightings and experiences that they don't get to. So they might know about some of the things, but it might just be a small proportion. You know, we talk about where are these things from, and they're not necessarily all from outer space. You know, and the scientists that talk about the possibilities of getting here from the vastness of space, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist, and I don't want to sound like I know about these things when I've got limited knowledge. But when you look at the advancements that we've made within science in the last 50 to 100 years, you realise that the things that were said talked about as being impossible then are now possible now. And there'll have been a lot of people from the scientific community who were adamant that this is impossible, but have had egg on their faces today. We don't hear about that, though, do we? But anyway, there you go.
Having said that, though, Paul, weren't we supposed to, according to people's projections and whatever, weren't we supposed to have flying cars by now?
I have no idea, but maybe, probably, yeah. That's about the only thing Dog can't do. I talked about him other day. He's been a mountain climber. Everybody realizes when this little dog comes with me, everything's tongue in cheek. Because obviously Dog can't do anything that I say he can do. But I did say it other day about only thing he can't do is fly, unless I throw him out at bedroom window, which I'm not going to do that. But no, anyway.
Zeno's saying, I think it's directly connected to the moon. I just can't remember what was when that comment came in, Paul.
I don't know, Zeno. So that one's kind of lost me, mate. But appreciate it. Obviously, there's been a few questions here, aren't there?
Yeah, but I mean, the moon issue. I mean, the moon in itself, Paul. Let's just for 1 minute going to this moon thing, why do we have this moon? What then drives our day and night? It drives the tides. Why do you think we have this moon, which we've only ever been to 50, 60 years ago, and we don't know what's on the other side, or we've only just flown reconnaissance spacecraft round to take photographs, but we've never been there. So what is this moon business all about?
I don't know. I really don't, Les. I mean, but everybody seems to have a theory on it. But I like the synchronicities. I like the fact that we get an eclipse and it's all perfectly lined up. It's almost like everything's pre-made, isn't it? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But no, I haven't got enough information in here to comment and put up an argument for or against.
I mean, we'll put it out there, Paul. If anybody's got really good, strong information, opinions, and coupled with opinions of their own, they're welcome to listen to these, aren't we, Paul?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We had Simon Lewis on a few years ago, who'd written the book The Two-Faced Moon, and another book about the moon. And apologies, Simon, I can't remember what that one was, but Ivan Stead, Our Fear is there energy. So I'm just flying cars will never happen. Peter says, and yeah, you're probably right, Peter. Not in my lifetime, anyway. But there you go.
Let's have a look. Zeno, the authorities are being controlled by these things, I reckon, as the human race is their lab property.
Could be. We could just be guinea pigs and just some kind of controlled experiment. We could be the harvest. We could be the crop. Who could say? You know, that's a terrifying thought, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, why don't these things intervene in wars? Why don't they settle conflicts? I don't know. A million questions and a million more potential answers, and I don't think any of us have got a true handle on what's happening.
Nickname is saying it might be worth requesting a fire to see if your names pop up. Probably, yeah.
I don't think
they won't even reveal that. I don't think that'll be blanked out. That'll be redacted.
They'd redact your name. There'd be a black line, so you'd be thinking, well, is it me or is it?
I
don't know.
Or is it next door neighbour?
Rod Hull.
Yeah. Okay. I've run out of questions that I've sent to myself. I'm just going to go through now. If you can see any, Paul, we can just bring up.
Well, I don't know what that was. Have you seen the sunflowers looking away from the sun?
I've got that one, yeah. Les, have you seen the sunflowers looking away from the sun? Yeah. Right, okay. Here we go. Just something to do with the moon. I think fire spirit moon's magnetic forces mess with your head, same as solar magnetics.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. You know, I've spoken, and I don't necessarily just saying police officers, but it was funny. It came from a few police officers saying that they could always guarantee if on a weekend if they were going to have a lot of violence if there were a full moon. It did seem to affect people and make them a little bit more angry. And there's the term, is it the lunatic or the lunar? And you know, and what are we composed of? Martin will tell us this, won't he, if he's still in? But I think are we 60% water? There's got to be some kind of push and pull there, some kind of influence, perhaps. Definitely.
Lee Roscoe's always coming up with great ideas. Do a moon live stream, truth proof and proofers.
That would be good. Yeah, we could do that. And I see Reggie, my grandson, says, "Are we a failed experiment?" I don't know, Reggie. You're not a failed experiment, mate. You're okay, but we could be. They might not be pleased with us where we're performing at the moment, Reg. But there you go.
John is asking, do you guys think we went to the moon? If so, how do you think they got back? No launch pad on to the moon.
How good is that, John? I don't know, mate. I really don't, honestly. And if I said I don't think we went to the moon, somebody else is going to argue. I don't. I'm assuming, John, that you don't think we went, and I'm probably with you.
I find this fascinating because it's one of the most polarized opinions that you can get. Is did we go to the moon or not? It's either you've got that camp No, we didn't go. We had no chance. The computer power wasn't there. And then you've got your people I saw it on TV. You know what I mean? But it's that polarized. It's black and white, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Which I found interesting, really. Okay, so here's a good question, Paul. I'm going to get this one up. Fort Man. Paul, have you seen military personnel at Bempton?
Bearing in mind, it closed. It says it closed in 67, but it was still lightly manned in 70. And it really is just an absolute shell. There's nothing. There's no windows. There's no doors. There's nothing on the base of any value or for any reason for military to be there. And I always stress this when I talk about RAF Bempton. It's totally out of bounds for Joe Public. It's on private land. But a few years ago, there were a guy walking on Cliff Lane. Excuse me. And let me think at year. It was 2017. Walking on Cliff Lane. And his early hours at morning, as he's looking over to the base, I spoke to this guy lots of times. So it's a face-to-face. It's not like a friend of a friend told me. He said, there's a large white vehicle on the base. So probably not military men. It looked like I don't know, like a big police vehicle, like you'd have a big police riot van or something, but just a white vehicle. He said, and there's 3 men evenly spaced out in full, hazmat suits on the base, slowly walking down. Says, I got my phone out, and I've talked about this when I talked to, I know it was 20, might be able to set date, funnily enough, because I might have it there. Just give me a minute. Sorry about this, guys. I can't see it, but I will find it, and I'll not find it because that was Wilsthorpe. I'm looking for Cliff Lane, and he said I got my phone out to film them. He said, and suddenly my phone, everything just went like an on old TV, all lines going down it. He says my phone were wiped. So how that works, I don't know. I don't disbelieve him because I've known this guy 20 odd years. He just told me this strange story, and I don't know, but that's not military, is it? That's not necessarily military people, but that was the same time fought as the strange vehicles were parked on the cliff tops and at Sledmere and at Garton on the Wolds, and I think there was some at a place called Kelk, which is close to Burton Agnes Hall, with the big dish on the back.
2017, wasn't it?
2017, yeah. Are you all right for a minute, Les? Or are you wanting to close this down? Because I'm going to find
No, we're okay. We're getting plenty of
military vehicles. 25th of July. What military vehicles on cliffs? I mean, this was Cliff Lane 2017, and I will just run down this 15th of July. Perfect triangle found in a crop circle that weren't there day before. I went and looked at that triangle. I took a soil sample. Incidentally, why did I take it? Because I've still got it. Deer found 3-inch hole in its side, 28th of June. I later found out on the same date, that was when the 30 sheep were found in the sheep run.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time. So that was the 28th of June. Right. 3rd of July, 6 a.m., 3 men in white I've put on RAF base, tell about bleep, phone going funny and losing all information. It's there. So 3rd of July, I know it don't mean jack really, does it, guys? A bit, but I didn't intend talking about that, but there you go.
Okay, let's have a look. I'm just going to pop back in there and see what we've got. Here we go. Interesting, this one. Steve T. Hi, Paul and Les. Would you consider releasing a series of DVDs with all the video evidence of the phenomena that you have accumulated over the years? That's a great idea, that, Steve.
Well, there's quite a lot of, like I've just said earlier, the VX2100 has got loads and loads of light form phenomena from that camera, which is on digital cassette. And over the last probably 4 or 5 years, myself and Pete, myself and Bob Brown, we've collected quite a lot of information and filmed quite a lot. I mean, a lot of it's just cameos of events. you know, you'll be looking one way and turn around and there's something happening, and it's just folding and imploding and gone. You know, a few weeks ago on Sunday live stream, I think I sent to Les just about a minute, weren't it, Les, of the silver light that we filmed over the sea. But I've got 5 minutes of that. How interesting is 5 minutes of the same thing? But when you consider the TV programs that are excuse me, that are doing the rounds about the unexplained phenomena, and they go to an ad break, and when they come back and there's a little chink of light in the sky, we've got something quite significant in a lot of these, and there's a lot of it that's not been seen. I played some of it when I spoke at the Awakening conferences, just little clips of it. And basically the main reason, Steve, because that could be next question, why aren't you showing it? I want to save it if possible for the documentaries that I'll be doing with Les and doing with Chris Turner. So we didn't want to just put it out there, not in its entirety. That's why when I got that 5 minutes, we just put a minute out.
Yeah. Do you think, here's a question. Do you think that putting longer versions of the clip, because you said obviously you've got longer versions of
it's 5 minutes of it.
5 minutes, right? Do you think that validates that sighting more if you'd put 5 minutes out there for people to see, rather than a few seconds and people say, you've just pointed that somewhere?
It probably would, start to finish. But my reason for just putting a minute out, I wanted to save it in case we were working on a project and it were needed. But it probably would, because, I mean, bearing in mind that night there were probably 6 or 8 people up there, and we all saw it appear. Didn't fly from anywhere. It appeared. And then it just appeared. It proceeded to just it almost looked like it was pouring through cloud. It was strange. I mean, you probably can't get that bit of footage up, Les, because I don't think you could. And then I think there were some other guys on cliff tops that we didn't know, and they got in touch with us to say they'd seen it as well. And then Monday night, actually bumped into one of them on cliffs. He came up to see us just to tell us about it, which were good of him, you know. Because you get loads of suggestions and loads of reasons for what we've filmed and explanations for what we've filmed, and a lot of time it's all coming from a good place, and they could be absolutely correct. But you know, we were filming a sphere of light last night, and as we're filming this sphere of light, in the distance, way beyond this sphere of light, there's aircraft. You can clearly see the aircraft. But we're filming something a lot closer that don't conform to anything that we're looking at. Don't know what it means. I mean, some of these things could be some kind of military equipment that's being tested. Not everything has to be from outer space.
I realised some of these questions we may not be able to answer, Paul, but no. Whitney...
no idea, mate.
Paul, why did Obama fire a nuke at the moon? Any thoughts? I don't know. It was a scientific experiment, supposedly. I think. People in the chat will correct me on that one if I've got that one wrong. But
I really don't know.
Yeah.
There's tons of ways to think about it, isn't there? I mean, what did it do? If it hit the moon, is it some kind of show of dominance to say, look what we can do? I don't know. You know, I really don't.
It was to measure the resonance, I think, Paul. I could have got this wrong. But it's to the resonance and to see and to measure some sort of measuring devices to see how hollow the moon is, if the moon is hollow or anything. Really? Lots of measuring devices were connected to that firing of the moon. I've got a question from this is interesting. Steve Wardley. I've had several occasions to go down RAF Bempton when in the fire service.
And I'll not ask you when, Steve, but I should imagine I know one of the occasions, and just give us a thumbs up. Did it to pump it out on one occasion, and there's not much to see down there, is there, Steve? You know, it's pretty. It's pretty much in a dilapidated state, which is it's such a shame, really. And do you know? We were also told, and I think Linny, if he's not in chat tonight, he'd back me up on this, that there's passageways that have been bricked up and rendered over down there, and we know the man that did it. And you actually worked with him, Persimmon Homes, years ago, because he was a bricklayer.
Oh,
And but I didn't know that at the time, so I'm not going to say, oh, he told me that. But there you go. So yeah, I can imagine, Steve. Yeah, probably for
okay.
training as well, I should imagine.
Yeah, okay. Zeno's bringing us the latest news. Incoming asteroid on Earthbound trajectory 720 foot long.
Oof, frightening.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't hit
Earthbound
our house.
trajectory. Yeah, if you could just pinpoint that a little bit nearer, I'll make sure I'm out shopping.
Yeah, and
When that comes
brilliant.
in.
I'm Martin.
Are we? What's this?
It was due
Are
to
we
kids.
going
I'm just.
longer tonight? I fully thought
Sorry,
it was.
sorry, John. I know. I'm just looking at Steve's because it's not in caps. It was due to kids poking about, lighting fires to see their way about. Ah, right. Nice one. Yeah.
What was that to do with, Paul?
The reason the fire brigade would have gone down the
Oh,
old
right. Yeah,
RAF
yeah.
base.
Okay.
I even know a little bit about that because it did get burnt out, and I even know, Christ, I even know how it got burnt out, but I'm not going to say it on here.
Yeah.
But there you go.
John's just pointing out we're going longer tonight.
Well, we didn't intend to, John, but
we go as long as you guys, that you're interested. You're the one that's asking us the questions, and we just feel it just right and proper that we, try and do some of these questions a little bit of justice.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to bring this up because it's from Dave Barker. Keep seeing black 4x4s with radar equipment mounted on the back. Have you seen these?
Not recently, Dave. You know that we were
talking in the Bempton area and Speaking area.
It will be doing, yeah. I'd imagine.
And just for those who might come onto this stream at some other point in time, Paul, and new to the stream, just give us a little overview of the area you're talking about.
Well, we're just looking at an area on the edge of the East Yorkshire coast. So I live in Bridlington. Dave's in between Speeton and Bridlington. That's as close as I'll say. It's only fair on Dave. I don't want to say where he lives. He's got unobstructed views right to the cliffs and the sea beyond.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming, Dave, that you're seeing these passing your property. Well, and I've not seen them, and I've not seen them on cliff tops, but we did back in whatever date that blooming bit of paper would say. Let's have a look, because it might tell us. Give us a minute, people. We got the Blake Lane. I don't know. I'm rambling, aren't I? But it'll come to me. It'll be there somewhere. But it was 2017, 2018 that we were seeing them. And these were Ram pickups with a huge green box on the back that had got the radiation warning on them and a big dish. And they were on cliffs, they were at Sledmere, they were at Garton-on-the-Wolds, they were at Staxton Wold, which probably isn't surprising, but a lot of people were reporting them. And we'd also got that hum, and I did wonder if that were the generator that we were listening from these things. They also appeared in, I think it was Air Force Monthly magazine. Somebody put a picture of one in from our area and told me about it. I went and got magazine, and they didn't know what these things were, but they assumed that they were SAM emulators, surface to air missile emulators.
Really?
And that could be what they were, but I found it fascinating that this was at the height of all the strange animal fatalities and everything else.
Okay.
There again, I've rambled from Dave's question. Not seen them, Dave. Could have just answered it easy, couldn't I?
Right then, I don't know about this question, Paul, but I'll throw it on the screen. PJ, Paul, has anyone seen the Pink Panther cryptid near Bempton?
Oh, I shouldn't laugh, probably, PJ. Unless it's... and now then, if this is Paul Johnson, just give us a thumbs up if it is. But it probably isn't. But, PJ does come on front at Cliffs for over a few years, and we know him as PJ. So if it is, I know what you're referring to. And let's just run with that. If it isn't you, then I'm sorry, but 2019, PJ, Rick, and Craig met me and Bob Brown on the cliff tops, and they were going to stay all night, and they'd travel Craig travels about 4 hours to get here, meets PJ and Rick, and they've got about an hour and a half drive to Bempton. They are all arrived in a BMW estate. We met them on cliff tops. And we said at about 9:30, well, weather were atrocious. We're off home. Where we're going, we're not stopping. They walked back to the car and said they were going to Caton Bay to observe, and then they were going to come back to Bempton in early hours and observe till morning. We're all walking up the path. Nothing out of the ordinary, and there's a row of trees that run towards the RAF base as you come out of the enclosure for the RSPB reserve. There's how many people we've got? Craig, PJ, Bob, Rick. We're all looking towards the trees. PJ were only one that didn't see it. A huge pink. He's put me off now saying pink. Huge sort of maroon triangle just burst out of the ground. So if it were just Paul saying it and relating these things, you'd think, well, Christ, he sees some stuff here, man. I don't believe a word he's saying. Bob saw it, Rick saw it, and Craig saw it. And we literally, I went down one side of this line of trees. Craig went down the other. Bob and Rick went into the car park along with PJ. He didn't see it. No, nothing to be seen. The next morning, I arrived first light because I wanted to see if there were any scorch marks on ground because it looked electrical. It just burst out. And I've said it before, but if you draw that shape, that's the shape it was, and just come out at ground. Rick even did a painting of it, like a watercolor. And but when it dissipated, let's assume we saw it for a second. It probably took 3 seconds to dissipate. It just sort of fizzled out, in which time it looked like it got wire inside it, like black lines. I went up the next morning, and I think this was 2019. If it is PJ, I've probably got it wrong. But if it is PJ, he can correct me. But I think it was 2019. I went up next morning looking for scorch marks, any burn marks on ground, anything. There was nothing. So what I don't know. So just when you think you can't be surprised by what you're seeing, you can be.
Okay.
Right. I love it when I've got other witnesses with me.
Well, there's another show to itself, Paul, for the rest of the night, it looks like. Melanie Alexander, do you have any interest in time slips?
Absolutely. And we'll not sort of read these out tonight or talk about them tonight, Melanie. But obviously, if you've got one to share with us, we'd love it. I was told about one this week, but I haven't spoken to the witness yet, that occurred on the beach at Bridlington. I've not got enough information to share it. We've got one from the Rudston monolith, potential time slip. We've got one from just out of Rudston. We've got one from Fraysthorpe. There's another one at Burton Fleming. These are all locations very close. So yeah, absolutely, it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, the time slip phenomena. It'd be interesting if Melanie's on talking about time slips and you're the lady that experienced it.
Okay, I think we've got 2 more on my list for tonight, and we are done after that. Let's have a look. Here we go. Many, from John Alexander, many so-called experts on podcasts say travel from distant star is impossible due to the distances and the speed of light not able to be exceeded. Once it was said we couldn't survive above 30 miles per hour.
You're spot on, John, aren't you? Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, we're out trying to put a downer on scientists or academics, but let's face it, when we come up with an incredible UFO sighting or experience, there's plenty of deep thinking people that come out and give us explanations for what we've seen and experienced, even though they weren't there. And there's no way that you can replicate the circumstances and the situation when these things happen. The science doesn't have the tools to do that, and not in a laboratory, because most of the things are happening outside of it. So I love it when things that were thought to be impossible are suddenly deemed possible. We don't hear them putting their hands up and saying, "Hey, I was wrong about that, weren't I? What a fool I am." So yeah, great, yeah.
All right, and I've got a question actually, Paul.
Oh God. Go on then.
When you go up to Bempton and there's a group of people who go regularly, so this is a question without mentioning any names, but do any of the group, when you see a phenomena, be it light forms under the sea or whatever, do any people in the group do do they actually feel anything? Do the physio? What am I trying to say?
Do they get any?
Do they get a feeling that
effects?
something's not right, or do they get some kind of calmness over them? Does something change within them, Paul?
Not on every occasion, but it has done.
Wow.
Yeah, it definitely has done. I mean, one of the lads, he's normally in chat, came up with us, and he saw and experienced something, and it really upset him. And he said, if this carries on happening, I'm not coming no more.
Yeah.
I mean, this bloke, he's a powerful presence. Let's put it that road. I mean, he's like 6 foot, 18, 19 stone, and it upset him. It frightened him. And it frightens the word. He'll not mind me saying that. It upset him and it frightened him. What happened to me? There were a presence back when I was Steve Ashbridge, and it frightened me. What happened to Mark? Probably about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and I've got to get this, Mark. If you're listening, I just want to record you telling us about it. That's all I want, because this guy's gone to Scotland and camped alone. He's been on moors camping alone. He's been all over. And he's only ever had this once, and he just walked down onto them cliff tops by himself. He says, and this fear just descended on me. He says it was just horrible, and it's never happened since. So I've probably done what I normally do, Les, and just veered away from your question. I can't even remember what it was now, but physical presence or some kind of presence.
Yeah. Does anything change in do they feel anything different? Do they go on like I don't know, spiritual level, for want of a better phrase? I don't know.
I suppose some people do. Andrew Collins, and people will be familiar with Andrew from Ancient Aliens. Andrew's been up there a few times with us, and he's meditated on cliff tops. And then I took him to Dane's Dyke with his friend Richard, and we did a bit of meditation. For anybody who knows me, it's not really my thing, but I'll not knock anybody's. And if somebody wants to do that, I'll spend time and just remain silent for an amount of time. I'm not going to knock anybody else's thoughts on that. But Andrew claimed that he felt and sensed and saw something. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But there you go.
Okay, we are going to finish with. Well, I might have done. Let's have a look. Right, here we go.
A hole in the ground. Somebody said something. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You meant a hole in the ground from the triangular light that came up. I think that's what you might have meant. I just saw it as in passing, and there were no marks. There were nothing. If that's what it were alluding to.
Okay, right. And I think this one from John Paul Body. Always a pleasure to listen to the stream, Paul. And I just nearly left early to follow up on earlier question. No sounds or explanation between no stones and then stones in the morning.
It's fascinating, John.
That is.
It really is. And I don't know whether you heard me saying earlier, John, but I'd love to know where it was that happened. And obviously give us a call. We'll have a conversation about it, or next week is good enough for me. But thank you, and thanks everybody. 167 people, and we literally decided to do this probably an hour. Well, not an hour ago now, but a few hours ago. So great and good to see you, Reggie.
Yeah, brilliant to see you all in the chat, and thanks for coming. And it was. I usually wash my hair tonight, but I've had to put that one off, obviously to accommodate the stream going out, which is always a pleasure, Paul.
No, it's been good, Les, and I'm glad we did it. And it's just to give you guys a little bit back, because, as I say, we do try to put these shorts out. It's just not been possible, and this was kind of a lot easier than trying to get a short film out. But we will try and get Chris Meeks, Ben Macdui for you for Saturday. And don't punish Les if we don't, because it'll be down to me for not getting him information.
And we have a great guest lined up for Thursday. So don't forget, folks, if you want to tune into Phil Cockval, if I pronounced his name correctly.
Is it Cockval? Yes, that's
dogman cryptid researcher. But he's got lots of views on ghosts, paranormal activity, you name it. He's got a view on everything. So that'll be worth tuning in on Thursday evening.
Yeah, excellent. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, Les. Goodbye, everybody in chat. 170 people. Thanks for support, guys. And we'll see you Thursday, all being well.
And thanks, Alison, for moderating.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
See you all. Bye.
Bye.